This document is called an apostolic exhortation. It's presented to us by Pope Francis. He begins with the words, "Rejoice and be glad." These are the words that stand before us at the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5. And Jesus, who calls us to everything, comes to us and promises us in return a life that is full and makes sense. So the basic starting point of Pope Francis' thought is, don't be content with a banal and mediocre life. Reach out for holiness. The question then is, how? He's very clear that this is not meant to be a theoretical treatise on holiness. It's practical. And he outlines his guidance in several steps. First of all, he introduces us to some saints. But interestingly, he has a key phrase, we should look first of all to the saints next door. The married people who live next door trying to raise families, single people, working for social justice, working in their business, people in authority, people we know and whom we can talk to and respond to. Now, he does also refer us to some notable saints. And one feature of this document is that he begins with a consideration of feminine spirituality. And he names certain famous women saints, Mechtilde of Magdeburg, etc. And also Josephine Bakhita, a famous woman who began life in a very difficult situation. She was enslaved from the age of 7 and then went through a very difficult life, finally freed, and then became herself a religious and eventually has been canonized. That's quite a remarkable focus for this document. Now, he has several other very practical points to make. One is that the way forward is to look to the gospel, especially the Beatitudes. So he works through the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after justice. He is very strong on that. He points out very clearly that it would be a mistake to seek inner peace at the price of neglecting our work for justice. But at the same time, he doesn't present a theory of justice or a theory of social change. His image is, what do you do if you meet a man or woman lying on the street at night? You have to help them immediately. And these are the kinds of social issues that he focuses on immediately, but he doesn't stop there. And he knows very well that social justice issues are much broader than that. He knows that from his own experience in Argentina. So he's very well aware that there will be pressures from government and other social forces. So the Beatitudes. He then indicates certain problems. One, I'll just use a very simple word, is ideas. He uses the word Gnosticism. Now, what he means is, this is a way of approaching things which focuses on having the right idea, and persons who get into this groove are so convinced that they have the right idea that they'll try to force everyone else to conform. And it's, as you would know from other things the Pope has said about the Church at present, he doesn't go along with that idea. He wants to be open and reaching out to others. And the second problem is what he calls Pelagianism, very simple terms. That's the theory of people who think they have all the right norms of behaviour and they're quite sure of their own ability to follow these norms, and they will force everybody else to conform. So these are the two major blocks to the kind of spirituality that Francis is seeking to present to us. So it's a very practical, down-to-earth review with some very notable features. Of course, you'd expect, being a Jesuit, that he would refer to St. Ignatius, which he does, not at great length, and especially he focuses, as again we would expect, on discernment. For those of us who do something of his own life, it's very clear that there were critical moments in that life when he himself had to engage in very deep discernment. And that was the background of his capacities to function as the Pope. He obviously has that capacity. And it has given him considerable flexibility in his approaches. So he draws certainly on St. Ignatius, but not only on St. Ignatius, he refers very specifically to Francis, the name he chose, and to other saints. Some of them were great intellectual leaders in their time, like Mechtild of Magdeburg and Edith Stein, Sister Maria of the Cross, great philosopher. So he includes these women, but his focus predominantly is on those he calls the saints next door. So it's aimed at people at the very basic level. Without leaving them there, he seeks to draw them on. And underlying the whole letter is the emphasis that while Jesus calls us to a life of holiness, he doesn't leave it to ourselves. Holiness is achievable only with the help of God's grace. And unless we are conscious of that, we will wreck everything and end up with the kind of banal and insignificant life from which Francis is trying to lead us. These are the basic notions in Francis' document, Gaudete et Laudate, rejoice and be glad, says the Lord.